Apprenticeship Expansion Program web training around grant reporting requirements. And we're scheduled for about an hour and a half here. Jennifer Foyle, as I mentioned, sent out the documents from that we'll be reviewing today. Includes the report templates that those of you who are previous grantees should be pretty familiar with, but we're going to go through all of those requirements today. Before we get into today's agenda, Patrick and Jen, do you have anything that you want to start us out with?
This is Jen. First, can we record this? Patrick, would you be able to record this for us?
Yep, I'm recording it right now.
Awesome. And then secondly, apparently not everybody received the attachments. I did reply all to Patrick's invite, but I wasn't privy to everybody who was invited to this. But the good news is that all of these documents have been loaded onto the partner page. And I will put that in the chat. And that's been also sent out to you for those who are learning the Illinois workNet system. And one last thing I'd like to announce is that Patrick, or maybe you'd like to say something about the work plans that are going out this week.
Yeah, 2 cars,
so can everybody mute themselves? If you're not speaking, please mute yourself. And I see Ileana Nava, could you mute yourself? We're getting a lot of feedback. All right, thank you so much. All right, and then just about the work plans, Patrick and I and Trevor are going over those, and you'll be getting your approved work plans this week, or a note about those. So all of them will be approved this week. And if you want to say anything else, Patrick.
Yeah, I can just briefly say that the work plan that we send to each of you will be the approved work plan. We don't call them final any longer, but it will be the approved work plan, and that will be the work plan that you will work from. So make sure you open it, take a look at it, review it, let us know if you have any questions about it. But that was the review plan that has been approved and loaded into the system. And again, we'll send you each a direct email stating that this is the approved work plan that you should be working from moving forward.
Okay, great. And Jennifer, just thank you for putting that into the chat pod. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started with the formal presentation. And I just want to say at the outset here that we are definitely aware that we have a mix of grantees. Maybe over half of our grantees are existing partners. Certainly, we've got a number of local workforce area administrators on the line, as well as some of our previous partner grantees. So it's awesome that we're all here again, continuing on the good work through apprenticeship expansion, but we also have a number of new grantees. And so I am going to go kind of back to basics to go through a number of the requirements, starting with part one, just some of the highlighted grant requirements in your grant agreement. Jennifer is going to cover the apprenticeship reporting requirements that are incorporated into your project work plan. Then we're going to talk about the quarterly report requirements and the templates, things that are required through our grant, and the GATA Grant Accountability Transparency Act requirements. And then we're going to talk about the grant reporting system, which is our fiscal system, where the budget and the grant funds are reported to the Department of Commerce. So to jump right in, part of administering the program is to make sure that you're aware of all of the terms and conditions of your grant award. We appreciate your patience as we've executed those awards and getting that finalized, getting that document finalized for you. The grant award has the same information as previous years. For those of you that are new, I do want to highlight the number of sections just around some areas of higher risk or areas that require just us to point out things that you probably are aware of. First and foremost, around allowable costs, and this is to be consistent with the uniform administrative guidelines. Those are the guidelines or the rules that govern the use of all federal money, including the money from apprenticeship expansion and also through the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. Grant expenditures should be made in accordance with generally accepted sound business practices. They should be made or they should be spent in accordance to your grant agreement within your scope of work. Any grant funds that are not expended during the period of your grant award will need to be returned to DCEO. Again, common sense here. Grant funds will only pay for the costs that are necessary to complete the program activities, right? Unnecessary costs are prohibited. And, again, I know on many of these projects, we've got some outreach activities that are occurring. And so just to highlight again, food, alcohol, entertainment expenses are prohibited, as well as gifts, donations, fundraising, promotional materials, for your entity. You can go out and you can have outreach for your program, outreach to businesses, outreach to industries that is intended to expand apprenticeships. But what is prohibited is costs that are highlighting X, Y, and Z organization or X, Y, and Z navigator per se. Participant support is allowable. Costs to increase pre-apprentices and get them into a pipeline for apprenticeships, those types of costs are allowable. And I did overlook the fines, penalties, interest costs, all that is not allowed. We also understand that these apprenticeship expansion awards, we're leveraging a number of different funding sources, which is great. One thing that we want to ensure is that you're not double counting your costs or you're not double dipping in the funds that you're charging to multiple federal awards. Certainly, you can have an apprentice that you're helping out. You're providing that related technical training. You're providing that case management, and maybe you're using other funding sources for that. Maybe it's Title I under the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, or maybe you're working with career and technical education to provide their technical training, and maybe the company is paying for their on-the-job training component, or vice versa, right? So the key is to make sure that you're not that you're leveraging costs, that you're not duplicating and charging the same costs to different grants. Allowable costs, again, just remind you of follow your procurement, your agency's procurement policies. Compensation should be reasonable for the services rendered and also consistent. So you shouldn't have a situation where you have a worker that gets paid twice as much because they're working on this government grant versus somebody who is, when they're not working on the government grant, they get paid a lower rate. So you should again pay them consistently for the type of work that they're providing. contract employees should be properly classified and have proper documentation as well. There is a limit to the salary costs that you pay out of these grants, and that's noted in the grant agreements as well. It's over, I don't know the number offhand, but it's over 120,000 is the limit. So if you're paying somebody a high salary out of the grant, you might want to double check your grant agreement, make sure you're not paying above and beyond what the cap is. Travel expenses should be in accordance with the state travel regulations and should be reasonable. And I know that, certainly in the age of COVID that, travel may be restricted a bit. Allocation of costs, again, it should be based on the actual activity of the award, charging the grant to the benefits that are received, right? So it shouldn't just be a certain percentage. If you have a cost allocation plan, it should be based on a rational analysis of the charges that are issued versus the benefit received. Maintenance of records, grants will be monitored. So the local workforce area grants, those grants will be monitored as part of your annual monitoring, and our non-formula grantees, we will schedule monitoring over the life of the grant. And so we obviously will need your records, both your records around serving apprentices and records around administering the program. And certainly if you are providing on-the-job training and supporting that activity within the grant, we'll need those on-the-job training agreements and all of the records that are associated with that. We'll provide both programmatic and fiscal monitoring. And then along the way, we'll provide, additional oversight and technical assistance. Our monitoring is, it's not we're not out there to, have some type of like a gotcha situation. It's a matter of ensuring compliance. Many of you on the call have heard me say even today that U.S. Department of Labor is, really looking at these non-formula grants very closely, especially, not only the ones that were awarded, for COVID relief, but that are associated around those work-based learning activities. There is definitely an increased emphasis around, risk management for those work-based learning grants, right? And work-based learning is basically, so that's when you're providing, somebody training in a work-based environment. Audit requirements, grantees are required to submit their audit as outlined in Article 15 of the grant, either a standard audit or a single audit. You may be getting some automated, you as the grantee will receive some standard audit emails. So as part of the grant making process, right, you have registered through the State of Illinois Office of Management and Budget portal, right? So part of that is that you have to answer an annual survey around your administrative operations and capacity, and that's through the internal control questionnaire. As part of that, you are registered, you have a registration for your grantee, and those primary points of contact will also get information emailed to them about your grant that is currently operating, especially as your grant got established. But then as the grant operates, you'll also get information about the audit reports that are due and how to submit those audits after that period is complete. Subcontracts, you must obtain written approval before providing any subcontracts through the award. Must be, you must hold all of your sub-grantees to the same terms and conditions of the grant, and the sub-grants must be informed of all of the requirements. Now, there's a difference between a vendor. A vendor may be somebody who is responsible for providing cleaning services, right? And your organization may have a contract, you followed your procurement, you got vendors to do cleaning services, okay? They don't need to have all of the, the specific terms and conditions as it relates to individual eligibility and all of those participants, what we call those subrecipients, right? Terms and conditions. Those, what are known as subrecipient awards, more focused on entities that are making eligibility determinations and making commitments for the program for expending money, right? So those major contracts with partners that, have those responsibilities, those terms and conditions that are included in Article 41 of the grant agreement, should be included in the subrecipient agreements as per the subcontract term of your grant award with us. Conflict of interest, if you have individuals that are a part of your grant project, such as, potential family members or other business associates, where there may be a real or a perceived conflict of interest, you are required to inform the department in writing of that potential conflict of interest. One of the documents that you signed with the department when you set the grant up was just the disclosure of those conflicts of interest. And so we should be in good shape with this. However, as the project progresses, if anything should change throughout the term of the project, again, just to emphasize that you are required to immediately notify the department of any real or potential, even if it's perceived, right? Even if, it's all above board, we still need to review that and document that that analysis has been completed. Protection of confidential information. This is highlighted throughout the award as well as within Article 41 of the agreement. Grantees must have policies and procedures in place to safeguard your apprentice's personal information. Okay, we're all aware of the threats of identity theft, and it is critical that you follow and have policies, procedures in place around the safeguarding of information. Okay, I'm going to take a pause right there and ask if there are any questions at this point. I hear faint yelling in the background, and it's just maybe it's that's okay. Maybe it's someone saying, "Oh, this is too much information for a Monday afternoon," and I definitely recognize that. So as we go along, if I'm going too fast, definitely chime in. I am going to try to just breeze through a lot of this because, again, much of this information you have but we definitely want to emphasize key points here so we're all on the same page. Again, that's the purpose of what we're doing today. So we'll continue then with part 2, and Jennifer Foyle is going to tag team with me here. I'm going to just kind of tee us up here. Just want to, the context of all of this is that U.S. Department of Labor requires a significant amount of detail regarding the Apprenticeship Expansion Program. For those of you that have been multi-year grantees, you'll know that the amount of detail continues to grow and grow and grow. And this is a mandate from U.S. DOL. I can tell you that the state, has worked very hard as it relates to trying to make the program work based on the apprenticeship expansion funding and the data requirements that are required. In July of 2020, we received some final guidance from the National Apprenticeship Office regarding how we were to report program participants. And as part of that, we had to plug this information into the Illinois workNet system that Patty Schnorr and her team were developing in partnership with the apprenticeship team at the state level. And so one of the documents that we definitely want to highlight is it's a Word document that was sent out, I believe, in late August or early September, and it talked about the system requirements and how we were going to be reporting individuals. What we did as part of this presentation is expand on that document, and we actually talked about that these are the Apprenticeship Expansion Program. These are the reporting requirements, right? So first and foremost for this meeting, we're talking about kind of the 3 steps that we need for your program reports and the 3 steps that we need for your fiscal reports. Very high level, we're going to go through that detail, and Jennifer is going to talk about kind of that key program report that is required. If you move further into this document, we have the Apprenticeship Expansion Program reporting system requirements, and it's important to note that based on the requirements of US DOL, we have identified different reporting requirements, and we'll go through those in detail as well. So just wanted to point this document out. We're going to go through it in a little bit more detail, but for right now, I think we should go ahead. Jen, do you want to go ahead and take a crack at that program report template that is also actually the project work plan?
Yes, thank you, John. So all of you, maybe that screaming in the background was the whole reporting of, we've been doing our work plans forever, it seems like. So you all are going to get your approved work plans back. Now, we discovered in going through all of these that there were 3 different versions of the work plans out there. When you get it back, you're going to receive the versions that we want you to actually have. So, you all had to do a project narrative and list some of your activity, the staff that's working on the different activities. And you all had to do a project work plan. So that's what we're talking about. So you had to list activities. So here, let me try to make this bigger. So this is just an example. You know, you had your grant number and your name, and you had a project manager, and you list some activities. Now, there were some special COVID ones in here, and then you had to go in and put timelines, responsible staff, and deliverables around the activity. Well, these specific things are what you will report on each quarter. So if you notice, if you go to this is under the Project Work Plan tab. If you go to the Quarterly Progress Report tab, those are automatically brought over. So if you put them on your project plan, now the activities show up here in the Quarterly Progress Report. So we want you each quarter, so the quarter that ends on 9/30/2019, that ends this week, obviously you're going to have to enter more quarters in here. You know, we want you to report on each of these activities. Now, if nothing happened during this quarter on that, then you would say not applicable. But everything else, we're looking for some, we're not looking for books, but we're looking for some good detailed information about what's going on with your grant, because we're constantly being asked about your grant, not just from DOL, but also from the director's office and the governor's office. And we have to be able to articulate. So instead of having to call each one of you guys, you know, every time the governor's office asks, we can look at these quarterly reports and see what's going on with your grants. So that's why it's important that you complete it. And then we turn around. You guys have 30 days after, I believe it is, after it, you know, the end of the quarter. So like it's at the end of 9/30, then you have 30 days when this is due. Well, we have 45 days at the end of quarter to get ours to DOL. So I use the information that you all provide us in here. So whatever you're putting here in yellow for what went on with this activity for the quarter that ended in 9/30/2019, but you know, it means 2020. So please change that. I'm going to use that information to put into the quarterly report that we then send out to DOL. Now, those of you that were with us with the last round of grants, you also knew that you had to do this organizations engaged. So I'm going to go to that next. So this one, DOL is still requiring this. Now, they called it companies engaged, but since we are doing a larger strategy with our navigators and intermediaries of building networks of the coalition of the willing, you know, the networks of partners around the state and within our regions, we are asking that you put the organization's name. So it's not just companies. Now, obviously, navigators will have a lot more companies, direct companies that they work with here. And they'll put as much information as you can find out about the company and put it into this this particular spreadsheet. We actually have to then, we combine all of these and we send this spreadsheet directly to DOL for every quarter with our progress report as well. So again, navigators will have more companies because the navigators are that point of contact and those people that are out there directly contacting employers. But then you'll have other organizations, maybe CBOs or nonprofits or training providers or community colleges or, you know, whatever it is that the partnerships that you're building, we're wanting here. And I skipped over, sorry, that outcomes and activities page. So this one, everyone had to put in a plan of how many, if you're an intermediary, how many apprentices you were going to be serving, male and female, and you broke it down. Now, obviously, you didn't know exactly, probably, at first. So each quarter, you're going to put the actual in here for each of these that you're serving for the apprentices. And most of the capacity building activities, that's more of the navigator side, you'll be putting in how many new businesses you engaged actually each quarter, as well as, you know, anything else under here, how many events you had, how many programs you expanded, or how many new programs you created. So organizations engaged, we had some definitions in here. So we have the definitions of, you know, registered, non-registered, pre-youth. Now, of course, for this grant, we're only counting pre-apprentices that then are going to be going into full registered apprenticeships before the end of the grant period, or, you know, full registered apprenticeships, excuse me. Now, for reportable organizations engaged, We're asking that it be, like a chamber, any kind of industry associations, colleges, businesses, et cetera, besides employers that you've had meaningful contact with and you've engaged in discussion about apprenticeships. So just because you left somebody a phone message, but you never had any interaction and they had never had any intentions of creating a program or expanding one, then we don't want to know about those. But we want to know about those that are meaningfully engaged. So that's basically what we're using the work plan for, is to report each quarter on the progress of your activity, look what the plan versus actual is over the length of the grant period, and then to know the organizations that you've been engaging and those partnerships you're developing. Any questions? And John, do you want to say anything else, or Patrick?
Jen, I would just say, this is also where we'll be tracking, as was in the notice of funding, the success stories. So those are important to us because we have to report out on that as well.
Good point. Yes, and you know what? That was up here, so I didn't even bring that up, so thank you. And does anyone have any questions or comments?
Jen, it's Kathy Meisinger. Forgive me if I've missed this, but will there be instructions as to how to post the success stories on Illinois WorkNet?
Yeah. So Patrick, do you want to go into that?
Sure. Not only will there be instructions, there's a training module that will also be out there. I think Dee is on the phone. Dee, did you have anything else to add to that? Dee Reinhardt?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we will have full instructions. We'll do a tutorial, a training, a technical assistance session on adding success stories. We are working on a way to try to help you report this information as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. Any more questions or comments?
I do, Jen. This is Kindy.
Yeah. Yes,
This
Kindy.
might be a small comment, but what if I asked Trevor about it, but some of my tasks weren't auto-populating in the quarterly progress report tab. Is that something? Is there someone I can work with on that spreadsheet, or is that just something we should talk about offline?
I think that will be a Trevor. That Trevor will be the person that will help everybody. He's actually putting these together right now to make sure everybody's is unlocked.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I already flagged that for him when.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we send it back out to you, yeah, you should.
Okay.
It should work, and if not, Trevor will be the one. And then that brings up another thing, is that when you guys send it in quarterly, please do not save it as a PDF because it cuts off your comments, and we can't read them and then incorporate them into our quarterly report to DOL.
So Jen, let me just add to what you're saying and what Kindy asked. So that's why we are aware that there were a couple of different locked versions, and then staff responded by sending an unlocked version. So some people had an unlocked version, some people had a locked, and it got quite confusing for us as well. And so that's why we are going to send the approved version. So there will be an approved version that is unlocked, that has the information in it, Cindy, and that will be sent to you. So please use the approved version that we are sending back to you, because that will be the version that we want you to use, because it's unlocked and it's got everything, all the tabs on it that are necessary, and and we, we went back kind of to the table and said, let's just get them a single version and not a piecemeal back and forth. So I appreciate everybody's patience. This has been a new process for us as well. And as we expand, we try to, incorporate technology, but we didn't realize it was locked. And so there were a lot of casualties during that time, but we hope we fixed it and we'll have a smoother process the next time. Thank you all for your patience.
All right, John. Anything else on that?
Okay. There are no questions. We'll keep going then. So that's really a critical document, right? So from a program management standpoint, that really gives DCEO, Governor's Office, U.S. Department of Labor, really provides them with that key information that is needed to show how we're doing, right? Big picture, how we're doing. The rest of this presentation is going to talk about some of the administrative requirements that are in place that go along with that. There's a number of reasons that these requirements are in place, and we're here to help you work through them. Another key piece of information that we wanted to reinforce is around the case management requirements, right? So we talked about the program reporting. Want to make sure that you all have a sound understanding of when and what system you use for reporting your apprenticeship activity, okay? So within that document titled Apprenticeship Expansion Program Reporting Requirements, and I'm gonna put it on the screen here. Page 3. This is the document that was shared in early September, right? So you talked about how DCO is working with Illinois workNet to really finalize the reporting requirements, and I know Dee has done a good job of explaining the Illinois workNet system capacities and capabilities, right? But we wanted to make sure that there was 100% understanding of what we're dealing with as it relates to what USDOL wants us to report and why they want us to report it, okay? So under this program, under this funding opportunity, the state used 2 funding sources. We used apprenticeship expansion funds, and in our accounting system, they're coded under Program 11. So if your grant started with 19-11 and then 4 more numbers, you're under Program 11, and that includes those organizations that are highlighted here. If your program started with 19-63, you are funded through the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act statewide activities funds. And these are statewide discretionary dollars that the state can use to fund the priorities of the State Workforce Board and the governor. And apprenticeships was a priority and continues to be a priority. So we knew that the $2 million that was available through Program 11, Apprenticeship Expansion, wasn't going to be enough to get the job done as it related to funding this cohort of intermediaries and navigators, and that's why the additional $2.5 million was invested with statewide funds. So with that, that's kind of an important kind of context to ground us, right? So U.S. Department of Labor, came out with evolving requirements around what they call a participant. And so those that are administering the federal workforce funds, they know that participant means something. That definition means something, right? and it means something different depending on the program that you're working with. So it's important to note that according to U.S. Department of Labor, if you are a Program 11 grantee, you are supporting Apprenticeship USA participants if you're using that Program 11 funds to provide related technical instructions or on-the-job learning or supportive services, okay? For everybody else, according to U.S. Department of Labor under the Apprenticeship Expansion Program, we are serving an other individual that is impacted. And that could include somebody who is a WIOA participant, either funded only through these statewide activities or funded and co-enrolled with our formula grants and those grants in the Program 68. For those of you who have those. It also includes incumbent workers, also includes individuals that were placed in a registered apprenticeship program that was developed as a result of our grant activity, and individuals that may be, so that could be for an apprenticeship program that was set up because of our activity, and individuals that were recruited into an existing or a new apprenticeship program because of our grant activity. So on the last page here, we talk about the reporting system requirements for each of those funding streams and activities, and where you are required and when you are required to use the different systems. So if you, again, are an Apprenticeship USA Program 11, you're to use the Illinois workNet system that Dee has provided us training on. Other individuals impacted that are Program 63 that are not co-enrolled also utilize that Illinois workNet system. For co-enrolled individuals into your Title I formula funds, you can use IWDS for that intake and eligibility, but then for other case management activities, you use that Illinois workNet system. For other individuals impacted that are incumbent workers, utilize the incumbent worker tracking system. And then finally, other individuals that are not incumbent workers and don't fall into those other categories, we have a manual spreadsheet that we'll be able to utilize and upload into Illinois workNet. So we're tracking all of those activities, because for each of these buckets, we have to come up with 800 registered apprentices that we are serving either as a apprenticeship expansion, Apprenticeship USA participants, or other individual impacted. And I recognize that you probably have already, heard this information, but I wanted to reemphasize it because it is a crucial piece of information that is related to your reporting at the apprentice or at that level, right? So we can get to our 800 number. So I want to pause there, make sure that there aren't any questions on that.
John, it's Kathy Meisinger. On page 4, under definitions in number 1,
yes.
Please clarify for me. I thought it was after July 1st, 2020 and not 19.
So the program, the DOL requirements are 7/1 of 19. And so we realized.
Clarifying that, because I believe last meeting we had a discussion about that, and I'm not sure that I got that right. So if it's 7/1/19, that's great. I just want to make sure.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, Jennifer, any further discussion on that?
And Kathy, you were probably right. We went back and forth on this because we got the grant back in 2019, and that's when you know, when we can start counting apprentices. Now, for wanting to get to the 800 number, we know that you all have done you all have received the money. It wasn't official until June or July of this year, but you all may have done things while you were getting ready with your application, while you were hearing about, you know, when you were part of the, you know, the bidders conferences and already starting to do apprenticeship expansion. And if we want to bring as many into the fold, because they did come out with that definition just recently about the other individuals impacted, and that we are allowed as a state to count other individuals impacted.
So, and I guess to expand on that, I would just say by them clarifying that definition, it offered an opportunity for us to maximize our deliverable as a state. So not as individual grantees, but as a state, we had an opportunity there. And since we did receive the funds early, there's been several of you that had started working with apprentices prior to that and intended to, you know, offer something to them in terms of reference or advice or something like that. And so it opened up the door for us to include them.
Thank you.
I think the key to you know, as it relates to meeting the definition is that you have to continue to provide, or you must provide them with support in the training or a supportive service. So the apprentice, the placement can be in place, but to the extent that you are supporting their continued employment is something that you can document. And, you know, certainly, you know, we'll be looking, or DOL, you know, we'll be looking to verify that 7/1 as an eligibility piece. So that is the key date that they point to. All right, so I think we'll go ahead then and then just continue along with this document. And I want to go back up to the first two pages. It's a little bit out of order, apologize for that. But want to give you kind of a high level background around the quarterly reporting requirements. And so, you know, hopefully this gives you a little bit of a roadmap here. So the state is required through the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act to standardize our quarterly financial and program reports. And we are required to have separate reports. Unfortunately, can't go under just one big report. At one point, we had them combined, but with GATA, we had to split those out. So 3 steps for submitting the program report. The first is to complete what is known as the periodic progress report template. This is a standardized template that is, you know, could be seen as like a cover sheet, if you will. Okay, it looks like this. Hopefully, you are seeing that on the screen. It is a PDF form. And the first couple of pages are the instructions and the definitions, okay? The presentation that I'm going to show you, I'm going to go through the form first, and then we'll reemphasize we'll do like kind of a screen by screen on the PowerPoint, okay? But I want to show you the actual form first. It's fairly straightforward, right? So it's your information, your grant number. There's some reference numbers that we're going to show you in the PowerPoint. You know, you answers final report, no. it's a quarterly report. And a key piece here, right, is this middle box. So responses to section 14 through 22 may be provided in a separate format. So what Jennifer showed you is our separate format, right? So what you'd want to do in this report is you check that box, and you do not need to complete or enter the information about these deliverables and performance measures, because that's already done in your spreadsheet that Jennifer went over. You can then, pick it back up under question number 23. If you're on track, performance is consistent, or if it's not consistent, give an explanation of what's going on, and then obviously put in who the authorized administrator is for the grant. We ask that in these templates that you that you save them again as a PDF, because we have to, and don't like print them off and sign it, so just put your name in there, because we have to complete this information on the bottom. In a similar way, the periodic financial report is the template that captures your budget information. So same thing, but instead of numbers, they use letters for some curious reason, but they did.
Don, this is Jen.
Hey, Jen.
Yeah, just
Go ahead.
quickly. So the PPR, you do not save as a PDF?
You save it as you save it as, just hit save, right? So you do like a save as, and I'll show you in the PowerPoint what to save it as.
Okay, I just gave somebody the wrong info, sorry.
That's all right, that's all right. Yeah, so you just go in and you just do file, and then save as, and because we're the government, we're going to provide you the specific naming convention for which you should save it, right? So in this quarterly report overview, if I can get it to stay, we have hopefully you're seeing the naming conventions, right? So when you do a save as, you're going to, save it as your grant number, PPR, what is the quarter end date, and that is a PDF file, right? So, there's going to be some other documents that we're going to ask, and this is how we're asking you to send it over to us. And we really appreciate your help with this, because it helps with our processing of the 25 different grants and all of the system uploads that we have to work through. We do work in an automated grant management system, and as Jennifer mentioned, the reports are due 30 days after the end of the quarter, and if DCEO doesn't keep up with the reports and posting them to the system, then it triggers like an automated non-compliance, and you might start getting nasty grams in an email, which is not intended. So that's why we just ask for your help so we can keep all this organized. Okay, I'm going to go to just show you just an overview on the periodic financial, and then flip back and answer some questions. So again, just some basic information about you. We've got some reference numbers that is included in the PowerPoint that will show. Your indirect cost rate is based on the indirect cost rate of your grant, and that's also included in the indirect base. So in your grant budget, that is where you can find this information if you don't know it. Program restrictions, yes, there are program restrictions, and you can put C grant agreement. I believe on most of these there is no match that is required unless it's in your budget. Most of you shouldn't have program income, but if you have it, you can include it in box T. Now, it's important down here as you get into these budget line items. We are also utilizing the grant reporting system as the system to get your information out of, so you don't have to recreate it here. So all you need to do is put CGRS and then go to this signature line, complete all of that, and again, do a file, save as, and follow the naming conventions with your grant agreement and the PFR for, for this month, closing September 30th, 9/30, 2020. Okay. Any initial questions before I go through the PowerPoint that should hopefully reinforce some of this information?
I think I helped confuse things with that because we had the two PPRs and the work plan. So both are like cover sheets. So I'm just trying to like reiterate what you said. The first one is a PDF, but you just save as, and it's in the directions are in that form, in that that Word document that we sent out. But it's also on the partner page, which I put the link again. And the other one definitely save as a Word document. So, and then there's that third Excel. So there's three different ways, but you've got explicit directions on there for them.
Right. So let me, because for me, like I get a little, it's hard for me to grasp things like in the first time. So I usually say it takes like, you got to tell it to me 3 times before it like actually sinks in. So, no worries here. I'm going to go through this again on the slide deck, but I wanted to show you the forms to give you kind of a first stab at this. So again, we've got 2 funding sources, right? Oops, let me go back to share my screen. So for those of you who are following the slide deck and can't see the screen, I'm on slide 14, and just looking at emphasizing we've got 2 funding sources, right? So we've got our program 11 and our program 63. So we talked about some of those reference numbers in both of those templates, right? So for both of those reports, that CSFA, or Catalog of State Financial Assistance number, is that 420-300082. The CFDA, or Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance, that's from the U.S. Department of Labor and OMB. So for our apprenticeship expansion, it's the number listed there, 17.285, and program 63, you will have 3 numbers, just again, because we're using those Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act funds, and there's actually 3 funding sources that are combined into one grant, the adult dislocated worker and youth, and that's why there's 3 CFDA numbers there. Apprenticeship reporting system, again, just to reemphasize that follow the guidelines that we sent out back at the end of August and reemphasized as part of this training, right? That should guide you as to when and where you record your apprentice level information, right? So grantees who use WIOA funds, so if it's statewide activities or you're leveraging your formula workforce funds, you use IWDS to start, and then workNet for support on case management. Grants that use program 63, 68 funds, or program 11 for incumbent worker training. Use that in incumbent worker tracking system. Grantees that just use apprenticeship expansion funds or other non-WIOA Title I funds, and our other impacted individuals will use the spreadsheet that will be sent out if it hasn't already. All right, now my favorite, it's the red tape, it's the GATA reporting requirements. And so those are the forms that we went through as it relates to what is required, and kind of following through the different steps of reporting. And so again, just to highlight, step one is to fill out this periodic progress report template. So fill out this template. That's step one. Step two is to create a supporting document cover sheet, because per GATA, we have to have this template along with a cover sheet, along with your Excel workbook that shows the actual work that is being done on the program side, right? So we need 3 documents to satisfy all of the program requirements. And I sent you a sample of a periodic performance document cover page, which I've posted on the screen, right? So first, again, is that template, that PDF template. Then is this periodic performance cover sheet, and then it's your reporting spreadsheet. So your project work plan spreadsheet. Okay, so not going to go into the purpose, but again, for completing these reports, you're going to need to have the latest Adobe PDF software. You don't need to know, or you don't need to have the PDF writer, but you will need to have the free version, the most up-to-date version of Adobe software. The standardized reports do report back to the conditions that are listed in your grant agreement, so that's important.
John, this is Dee. John, this is Dee. May I please reiterate about the reports in Adobe Reader? Because if they fill it out in the browser window, they will not save the information.
Great, that's a great tip, and thanks for that. So, always good to do like a, save as, maybe create a different folder on your network. And that's the thing. It's so once you do the first quarterly report, you kind of get it all set up, right? So the template that we're using, both on the program reports, and when I talk about the template, I'm talking about this document, right? So once you do this once, hopefully you have it for the entire grant, because you're really going to be just updating the period of performance, right? And then, but if like for some reason, we're kind of off track, you would have to explain that. But other than that, you're basically using that as a cover sheet. So I guess you could characterize this as cover sheet number 1, and then we have that Word file, right? We have that periodic this is kind of cover sheet number 2 that is really referencing to the your project work plan Excel spreadsheet, right? So this is your cover page for that, so we can upload it into the system. Again, this is something that there won't be many changes here either. The thing that is going to change from quarter to quarter is that Excel workbook that Jennifer showed us, and that's really gets to, from a program standpoint, that's really where we want to see you know, your good information. The rest of this is more kind of administrative requirements, so we're in compliance with the grant agreements and GATA. So the next set of slides goes into a ton of detail, right, about how to complete that performance, that periodic performance template. What we tried to do on the Word document is summarize this, right, and to go through the steps. Kind of the step 1 correlates to correlates to all of the slides that we're going to go through here, right? So, you know, include all of your information, include part 1 through 13. Talked about how it's important to click on that box that shows that we're utilizing an alternative file or database. That allows you to skip right to question 23, right? Performance measures, again, this is all captured in your project work plan, and you know, so it really is to you know, you can have a very high level explanation. If you're not on track, you can include that in box 23, and that is here. If you are not on track, you would include that narrative here. Next slide. Just talking about you know, what is our logistics of kind of merging together the required template that we upload. In addition to the template, we have what's called the supporting documents, and that's the quarterly report or the project work plan templates. The bottom of the periodic program report would point out that grantee certification does not need to be signed, and we ask again that you follow the naming convention that's listed in our one-pager. I'll pause there, make sure there's not any questions about the periodic performance report. And sorry, I'm jumping around between documents, but wanted to make sure that you see the document that I was referencing. Any questions? Okay. So we'll continue on then with just the slides for the periodic, the periodic financial report. And again, there are high-level instructions on how to complete this report along with the definitions, and we gave you a summary on kind of that summary cheat sheet. Complete sections A through W. We talked about reference back your grant budget around your indirect cost rate if you are charging indirect, and also both the indirect rate and the indirect base. And so you will see in your budget there is a whole tab that is dedicated for the indirect cost, and it will have what is your indirect cost base, right? For many of you who don't have a federal or state rate, your indirect base is going to be this modified total direct cost, or MTDC, okay? Your indirect base has to match what you included on your grant, which should match what is on our GATA portal. Some of the other reporting elements that we talked about, Section P, mark yes to the program restrictions. Section Q, type in, reference the requirements of Article 41 and the budget, because that's where the restrictions are listed. Part R, the answer is no, unless your grant requires match, and then include that. Section S, if Section R is no, then enter an A for that. Section T through W doesn't have to be completed unless you have program income or interest, which you probably shouldn't have. And then Section X, right? We talked about just mark in Section X where it is just a matter of typing in CGRS. You do not need to complete these lines. They want you to add or delete. No, just say CGRS. All right. And then, so Section E, Y through EE can be left blank. Again, just like the performance report, we ask that you follow the naming conventions. Now, we are asking for supporting documentation for your expenditures in the form of a trial balance. And I'm going to talk about that, of what the heck that is, and what it's used for in a minute. But that is the supporting documents that we have for the periodic financial report. So if you go back to our kind of our cheat sheet here, we have a 3-step process for submitting the financial report, right? So we fill out the periodic financial report template that we just went through, and then we create kind of our second cover sheet, supporting document cover sheet, which is basically a cover sheet for your trial balance, which is just basically your accounting system. It's a report from your accounting system that shows all of the grant budget line items and what you have reported to us in expenditures. This is something that our fiscal staff will review to make sure that you're in line with the requirements of the budget. And we'll talk a little more about that in a second. Certification is similar to the periodic performance report. It does not need to be signed, but you do need to put an individual that is an authorized signator. So some important fiscal requirements, and this gets to some kind of foundational requirements around that trial balance. According to the grant, your system, your fiscal management system must be structured to provide accurate and current financial information about the grant. You must have, you must report your costs in the grant reporting system, which is an electronic system where you report your costs and you request cash. Part of our presentation today is to go over some of those highlighted screens. I'm going to go over those in lightning fast detail, but we can have a follow-up session on using the grant reporting system if there is a need for that, we can kind of go through in much more detail. Grantees must submit their quarterly financial status reports and submit supporting documentation to trial balance. And that has to tie back to your accounting system. Now we know that not all of your accounting systems have the capability to show your grant at our budget line item, and so we may need like a crosswalk document to show your system's funds and budget lines crosswalking back to the grant and what you report in GRS. And we can talk to you on an individual basis if you have issues with that. Some common issues around reports. We found over the years, just not following the naming conventions, just not completing the information around indirect cost. These are all pretty self-explanatory. Not providing supporting documentation such as the trial balance and the GRS screen. And this last part is on that grant reporting system. So take a pause here to see if there are any questions. All right. So I know due to time, I'm just going to kind of continue to fire through this, and thank you for your continued attention. I know this is a lot of system talk on a Monday afternoon. So in the home stretch here, we're going to talk about the grant reporting system, and grantees access the system using this link. And your grant manager can set you up. We typically ask that you have one individual per one access point per grantee to report your costs. If you run into issues around getting set up, or if your password needs to get reset or whatever, here's the instructions for that. We ask that grantees report their costs on a monthly basis. We ask that, we require our formula grants to report by the 20th, and we ask that non-formula do the same, just so we can have an accurate understanding of where you're at for the previous month. So in other words, for the month of September 30th is the period end date, right? So by October 20th, we ask that you report all of your costs in GRS for the month of September. That way we can run reports and we can take a look at what's happening with the grants, and we can track your expenditures. You're required to keep supporting documentation for all of your expenditures, and we talked about those considerations around allowability and making sure that they're needed for the grant. Reported expenditures must be on an accrual basis, and if your accounting system is not on an accrual basis, you must develop best estimates based on the documentation at hand. So we talked about that crosswalk document. So within your grant, you have specific budget line items. And if you have different accounting codes, we'll ask you to have a crosswalk sheet and to work with our accounting staff to verify those costs and the costs reported on the grant. cash requests are typically processed on Mondays and Thursdays. Obviously we talk a little bit about, if there's holidays or other days out, we'll process them the next day. You use the grant reporting system to request your cash. And depending on the grant, you have to show that you have incurred costs before you can draw money to support the activity. So if the amount of cash that you're requesting exceeds the limits that are placed on your grant, our accounting folks and our team members will be in touch with you to say, this is what we're seeing in the system and we're not able to approve this until we see some more costs reported or understand what you're working through. If you are a new grantee and want direct deposit, here is the information where you should contact, they will be able to set you up. And I believe Trevor and other staff can also help you if you're running into trouble, but best bet is to connect with the comptroller's office directly to get yourself set up on electronic deposit. GRS navigation. This is going to be a very, very high level overview of that GRS system, right? There is an entire GRS manual and a whole other training session on GRS that we can walk through. But I want to point out that our financial management system is kind of, it is definitely a legacy system that has a lot of positives to it because of the levels of control that are in place, which are important in dealing with complex federal grants. But it does lack some of the capabilities of a more modernized accounting system. So appreciate your patience and recognize the complexities of working through these legacy systems. So within GRS, again, you have to get set up in the system, work with Trevor and others to get set up in your organization so you can, have authorization to report your costs. Here are some tips around entering expenditures, right? Make sure that you utilize decimal points and cents. Utilizing negative numbers, for adjustments. You have to, utilize these what they call the F1 buttons, and I think you can use your mouse to do that. Again, we talk about having your costs reported by the 20th, and this is just basically goes step by step on how you were to enter a cost into the system. I'm not going to go through all of this in a ton of detail. I believe within that GRS reporting manual, it does have some screenshots of all of this, and again, just takes you kind of step by step by step. Our team is available if, especially that first round of costs that you're reporting. Our team, Josh Coons in our budget office is awesome. Trevor is new to the team. He's learning this. He'll work with Josh and others on our team to help you out and provide you assistance as you need it, especially that first time you enter costs if you're brand new to this. Okay, so also within the grant reporting system, that's where you request cash. Again, not going to go through the detailed screens, but utilize those those function buttons, the F2s and the F3s to, you enter your cache, and then you click on the old function keys to move forward. Follow the instructions in the manual. You can go to these cache request screens to track your cache, to see when the warrant or the check or the electronic deposit is issued by the comptroller's office. And you can also check on the status utilizing the website listed here. Again, there's a sub-grantee cost ledger where that's you, right? So you're their sub-grantee, and it shows by line item the budget and your costs that you have reported and the amount of funds that are available. Also within the system, when the grant is all over, we ask that you use GRS to close out the grant, and the screen outlines that process. Again, it's a kind of a legacy system where we're navigating between screens and clicking on functions and putting in the exact numbers and the yes in the specific area that will trigger the system's closeout. As I mentioned, to get yourself set up, Trevor can help you with the form that's needed. If you get password problems, you can email this site. Trevor and Josh can't help you with that. They've got to set that up through our central management system. And if you've got payment suspensions or error messages that come up in GRS, you can definitely contact Trevor and Josh on that. If you can't enter costs from the previous month, after the 20th, you're locked out, and you just have to report that cost on the current month. Direct deposit, we talked about that. Entered the wrong amount. You will have to just make the correction and enter in additional costs. So in this example, if you wanted to report $3,500 and you just put 3500, it would interpret it as only $35. You'd have to re-enter that, the 2,000 plus to make that full cost reported to the 3,500. Key contacts, obviously Patrick, Jennifer, Trevor, and Josh. They will help you out through the grant reporting process. I would just leave by saying that we hoped to summarize all of these reporting requirements using this one document that, again, just hopefully goes step by step, 1, 2, 3 for the periodic performance, and 1, 2, 3 for the periodic financial, and then also those naming conventions, and also the reporting systems critical that we're capturing the information about the apprentices that we are serving. So with that, I see we've got 1 minute for questions, but I'm happy to hang around if there are questions that extend beyond our time.
It's a lot of information.
Still out there. It's like drinking from a fire hose. Everybody thirsty?
Well, I'm glad it was Monday,
Yeah, it's
not
a lot
Friday.
to process.
All right. Well, I guess if there are no questions, I know there will be questions once you start doing it. And therefore, when there are, contact Trevor, Patrick, John. Just don't contact me. No, I'm kidding. Or me, and we'll help you. No. And we'll all make through this together somehow.
And we want to be respectful of your time, too. This meeting was supposed to go till 4:30. If you've got something, you really want to talk to us about, please reach out to us. Otherwise, we are right at 4:30. And I would like to say thank you all for your participation and listening. And we hope this has been helpful. And John and Jen, especially, thank you so much. You guys are awesome.
Thanks. All right. Well, like Patrick said, thank you all for hanging. If you have any questions, let us know. Have a great afternoon, and we'll be talking with you soon.